Hello and welcome to Foundation IT's podcast slash YouTube video content. I think this is episode 5. It's been a long time since we put a podcast out there. Really pleased to have an old friend of ours, Toby Skerritt, joining us from Nerdio. We're going to talk today a little bit about the latest Nerdio release. So we're going to get a little bit geeky and look out at the end where Toby gives us his 3 computer games if he was stranded on a desert island answer. Hey Toby, yeah, nice to have
hey,
you
Mike.
have you with us, mate. I know that you burn the midnight oil and work all hours God gives. So thanks for giving us half an hour of your time, mate.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Just
Good
remind us, remind us what you do now.
So I'm one of the product managers for Nerdio Manager for Enterprise. Nerdio have 2 products: Enterprise, which is a per tenant installation for AVD management, and also now for Windows 365 and physical management, and NMM, Nerdio Manager for MSP, which is a MSP overlay, so you can manage multiple customer tenants. My role is essentially to help prioritize the features that we bring to Nerdio Manager for Enterprise, to work with our customers, our developers, internal stakeholders to kind of prioritize those features and make sure that we're building in a direction that adds customer value.
Thanks. And you're going at some cadence, right? I mean, the rate of change is quite phenomenal.
It is, yeah. We'd like it to be quicker, so we'd like to be building more. But as I'm sure you, well, I'm sure you guys can appreciate, our most recent features, which we're going to talk about now, have been fairly development intensive. They are new directions for us, and so have required quite a lot of pathfinding. But definitely want to keep up that that velocity, certainly.
Yeah, and you had quite a big hand, if I'm right in saying, or a lot of involvement in the latest 5.0 release. There's been a load of content online already about it. We've posted a couple of blogs. I know you guys have, and as have other partners. Just tell us briefly about what strides have been made in that latest 5.0 release, because it's not just development to the existing feature set. It's expanded into new areas, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So with 5.0, we've kind of added some additional directions to the product. Now, if you're familiar with the product, you would have seen in 4.9, we released the beta of Unified Application Management, which was a taster. It had some limitations, but with 5.0, we've had these 2 key areas of functional development, which have been Unified Application Management and unified endpoint management. I also want to talk briefly about Modeler Online, because I know that was a very popular feature which we've added, but that kind of sits outside the product itself. That's a tool for customers and partners to use. But Modeler is also a function of our product and sits inside a new suite of tools which we're going to label as the Advisor Suite, and I can talk a little bit about that as well. But coming back to UAM and UEM, Unified Application Management came from conversations with customers who had frustrations that their application estates were very diffuse and siloed. So there was no central location for deploying applications across all Windows devices. And there are a few solutions to this. You can do it natively with Microsoft tools. You can introduce third-party tools, and customers tended to use a range of different tool sets for different scenarios. And we didn't have a good solution for this initially, because we have a philosophy of only using native Microsoft functionality. We don't want to introduce a Nerdio agent. We don't see value in that at this point. So what was really the kind of game changer for us was Microsoft's introduction of Winget, the Windows Package Manager tool, which is a native tool which allows you to install, update, remove applications from your Windows devices. That could be AVD, that could be Windows 365, that could be physical devices. So that's the underlying tool that we're using to now facilitate our unified application management toolset. And as I mentioned, customer estates are diffuse, those applications are diffuse. We wanted to provide a centralized console where customers could review all applications in their estate, import these applications into a private repository and deploy them potentially to their physical Windows 365 and AVD devices, but from that single console. And again, we wanted to bring the same device management philosophy and user interface philosophy that we have within the Nerdio Manager for Enterprise product. So a console that's well recognized, simple interaction with that console. We want to make this process as simple as possible, because application management tools, something like Config Manager, for example, is extremely complex. It takes a significant amount of time for somebody to learn to manage an application estate. And there are valid reasons for that. You know, it's grown in complexity over the past kind of 30 years.
And application estates are complex, right? So, you know,
absolutely,
complexity leads to complex means of managing it.
Yeah. So we've tried to start from a baseline of simplifying that process, getting the core functionality which Winget offers into the product, and allowing customers the ability to link both the public and private repositories so they can deploy and import applications. And we're going to enhance that in future, and we'll talk about that a little bit further. But that was the key philosophy behind application management.
Sorry to interrupt you, Toby, but you mentioned that the way that functionality came about was through conversations with clients. This wasn't something that was necessarily a roadmapped item on sort of Nerdio's playbook. When you look at your kind of growth trajectory, this was something that came off the back of feedback from talking to partners and clients. Is that did I
it's a combination of both. So we had a direction in mind, which was that we felt we could do better with application management. We felt we weren't offering a good solution there. We had scripted actions which worked, but we wanted something better. And with product management, you take those ideas to customers. You say, hey guys, this is our idea, help us to validate it. And the customer response was, hey, yeah, it's really challenging. You know, we have the SCCM team that have their agent on our AVD devices. They're deploying apps that we don't want. We then have to work out how we can remove them. There's these different stratas of management for our devices in our environment, and it causes us problems. And if we had a single console from which we could have ownership of the deployment of these apps, that might simplify things for us. So that kind of helped us to divine the direction. Yeah,
makes sense. So sorry, I think you're going to move on to UEM.
Yeah, so unified endpoint management. We're increasingly seeing customers managing an intentionally diverse estate of desktops. So historically, people would be simply managing a physical estate, maybe with some AVD or some physical, some on-premise VDI. We're seeing people with a whole range of different desktop types, whether it's physical, AVD, Windows 365, and mobile devices, which we don't need to do any management for at the moment, but something we will be thinking about in future. And again, we didn't have a good story for supporting those management requirements. Intune is a great product. I like it. I've deployed it for many customers, and I think it works really well. But I think it's also fair to say that it's a complex and challenging product to learn. You require a specific skill set, and it can take junior and mid-level admins a lot of time and a lot of trial and error to understand how they should be using that platform.
So not too dissimilar to Config Manager. You got the same situation whereby Intune, complex, great product, vast product, difficult to learn, difficult to get good at quickly, right?
Yeah, it's Config Manager online, or Config Manager in the cloud, I guess. I mean, it has some different functionality, but the complexity is still there, and it can do lots of good stuff. But we wanted to be able to provide a simplistic management console that level 2, level 1 engineering teams could manage, review, understand where action was required or where issues exist, and perform some high-level actions against that environment in order to avoid having to dip into the Intune console or to escalate to a senior Intune engineer. And again, our design philosophy, our UI, I feel, is simpler to understand and manage devices from than the native console if you're not familiar with the native console.
Yeah, I mean, we've as a partner, we've certainly benefited from getting our engineers up to speed more quickly, learning the Nerdio way of deploying or using Nerdio to deploy AVD, or using Nerdio to administer and optimize AVD in that context. It sounds very much like you're trying to bring the same simplicity, operational simplicity to running devices and apps as you've done to AVD. That was my reading when I first read the approach. I mean, very much true to the values of simplify, optimize. You know, is there a cost saving in there? Yeah.
Well, there's so I think you've completely nailed it with that assessment. Yeah, absolutely.
And we didn't rehearse that either. that was off the cuff.
We didn't. So I think there is a cost saving, and the reason is, as I mentioned, Intune's a complex platform. I'm not talking about a licensing cost saving.
Sure.
I'm talking
about or optimization cost where you're reducing compute resources. Yeah.
It's a soft cost saving because Intune demands a certain level of technical skill to manage. Yeah. And those skills are in demand. We were constantly being told by customers, we can't find administrators to manage Intune. They're expensive. If we hire them, they'll leave because they're in demand and somebody's going to pay them more. If we can layer in a platform that allows for a higher level of administration, so you can just ensure that your devices are performing as you expect them to and perform some actions, that reduces that burden on the higher tiers of Intune skill, I think, while still providing visibility of a device status and the ability to make some changes. And we're also adding very granular role-based access control as well. Role-based access control is something else that our customers really said was a pain point in Intune for them. It's totally achievable, but there is some complexity to implementing it in the way that you might want to. With our solution, it's the same as role-based access control elsewhere in the product. You know, you tick some boxes, you assign it to a user group, and then they can only see the elements within the console that you've allowed them to. And I think it's quite powerful. We've certainly had good feedback on it.
We're going through a process with a customer at the moment where permissions is a challenge for them, just because, you know, it's a big business. They've obviously got different owners, and the guys that own the sort of AVD or endpoint estate, they're sort of playing in somebody else's sandpit when it comes to Azure. So you know, working out, you know, what does Nerdio need permissions to do? What are the users that are going to be using Nerdio need to do? Needs basically sign off from other divisions in the business that perhaps aren't necessarily as invested in the project as these guys are. So that's been the RBAC stuff in Nerdio has been really useful there, actually, because it's kind of given some reassurance that there's multiple layers of permissions going on that restricts access of a user to what they need to see, as opposed to, you need global admin to the entire subscription or whatever it might be.
Yeah, totally.
You touched upon Advisor. I've enjoyed using, you know, I've got simple brain, right, and you know, I'm more commercial than I am technical. So when you launch Advisor, I was quite interested by it, and I think only a few days after it was launched, this is going back to sort of February time, the modeler capability within Advisor, we use that purely as a basis of trying to model the cost for a customer. That, you know, they had a number of different types of workload that they wanted to run. So they had a number of different host pools and dedicated desktops, etc. So we used Modeler before it was made available online. My understanding, though, and I'd like to talk to you a bit about what's next without you giving away trade secrets, but my understanding from the update is that Advisor is going to become a suite of tools that not only enables numpties like me that just want to know how much these things are going to cost, but for a technical or deployment team to be able to model their AVD environment as they see it, and effectively, with a few button clicks, have Nerdio deploy the AVD environment on their behalf. Did I read that and hear that right, or have I got that wrong?
Yeah, so I think it's a fairly natural progression that AVD modeler within the product will allow customers to deploy the models. Yeah, so the next stage there would be, okay, I like what I'm being told by this model. I understand those costs and I accept those costs. I click a deploy button and maybe I go through another wizard in which I specify some of the details, but essentially it's then going to replicate that model into a host pool or set of host pools.
Yeah,
that's a logical
and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a logical extension, and that's definitely something we're going to be doing with the modeler tool because it makes sense. Not from the website version, obviously, because that would be extremely complex. But within the product, we'll be able to do that.
I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
But the advisor suite itself, although this forms a part of it, is going to be about assessing people's Nerdio Manager for Enterprise environment or assessing their AVD environment and saying, hey, I think there's something we could do better with. There's some cost efficiencies we could make here, or your users don't use your desktop during 10% of your auto scaling window. Maybe we can help you auto scale more efficiently.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of objective of advisor. It's to be providing these intelligent recommendations to either save costs in the environment or better provide resources to your users. It could be, your desktops are under-specced and you've not got alerting set up, so you don't know, but all of your hosts are hitting 100% CPU and people are having a terrible time. And you may not have mechanisms in place to discover that, and that's what this would like to achieve. So in both directions.
Yeah, I'd sort of neglected to mention that, but I remember in one of the events I've been to recently that was mentioned, and it's a massive point because you deploy something on day one, and whether you use the modeler or advisor to do that or not, what you build on day one is seldom what it looks like in day 30, year two. The AV, one of the beauties with AVD and to an extent Windows 365 is the elasticity and the ability to grow and shrink to align with business requirements. How many AVD customers out there have left a bunch of machines on when developers have left and don't know about it? They're just absorbing cost because maybe someone else looks at the Azure bill and doesn't know. I think the ability to make recommendations over and above what you see natively within Azure is going to be massive for partners and for users of NME. That's really exciting. What was the timeline on those elements, Toby? Is there an exclusive you can give us?
So these will be released as separate features. Obviously, I've not detailed too much about those at the moment, but this is not a single overlying feature that will roll into the product because we'll be looking at different areas of functionality. Sure.
Yeah.
Timeline is we'd like to get a few of these out over the next few cycles. So I mean, before the end of the year, there will be some good functionality there across a range of features within the product.
Yeah, awesome. Again, without giving away any other trade secrets, because I'm sure you've had to sign some sort of secrecy act or something in terms of telling us what you can and can't before any major release. Is there anything else you can tell us about what's on the roadmap that you've not already spoken about? Because you've already spoken about a bunch of stuff that's coming down the pipe, but anything else newsworthy to share?
So we have a great many customer feature requests which come in regularly and are assessed by all members of the product team. So we hope to get as many of those in the product as possible, because obviously feature requests from customers are super important to us. But more broadly, developing unified application management, developing UEM as well, are key kind of directions for us, because these are new products. They have some good functionality, but we want to enhance that, in the same way we have done with our AVD functionality over the past couple of years. We want to make sure that we're building high quality features into these tools with every release. So yeah, just I would say that's our key direction, as well as the advisor suite.
Awesome. So just deviating slightly from Nerdio, those that know Toby well know that he's an EUC connoisseur and has been in the space for many years, primarily around Horizon View, right? That's kind of where you cut your teeth on the VDI.
There's a lot of that, yeah. A lot of that a few years ago, certainly.
Yeah, showing your age now, I guess. But from what I can tell, anyway, and it's a 50,000-foot view, there's probably more disruption in this EU space than perhaps there's been in a long time, particularly with the emergence of AVD and Windows 365. It seems as though a lot of people are moving from a traditional on-prem VDI solution with somebody like Citrix or VMware and moving into AVD because that fits with their cloud-first strategy, or perhaps they just want to save on licensing because they're already licensed for it. And there's all these new vendors coming into the market as well, particularly around the apps piece. Again, that was very prominent at the last EUC forum I went to. How do you think this space is kind of shaping up? What's it going to look like in 3 years? Will we see sort of complete domination from AVD, Windows 365? Are we moving to a world where it's cloud PC first as opposed to fat client with all the tech on the device? That's certainly the way I think Microsoft want things to go, but really interested to hear your take and perspective on the space as it is now and where you think we're kind of heading.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So if you talk to Microsoft about their vision for the direction of EUC, it's all about this kind of and story. It's AVD and Windows 365. It's Windows 365 and physical. So that they see these as complementary technologies, and I think they will evolve together in this direction over the next 3 to 5 years. I really think that Windows 365 integration with physical devices is going to be enhanced. So we've seen Windows 365 boot, for example. I've always felt that this integration of virtual cloud PC and physical device is just going to be enhanced, and the functionality is going to get better. There's some file sharing functionality which is in preview currently between those two devices. I think we could make better use of OneDrive in that scenario, perhaps to have devices sharing those applications. And I think this is completely speculation.
That's what I asked you for. Not looking for fact.
So Microsoft have done a good job of kind of cornering or directing this market. I think they can do more there through, as I mentioned, tighter integration, but also licensing and incentive. So there could be some kind of licensing incentive between physical device licensing and cloud PC licensing, or cloud PC consumption, and even AVD potentially, to mean that you're buying this as a package. You buy it as a solution rather than, or as a holistic solution rather than point solutions, which you use given your individual use case, your individual requirement at a time. And so we see these devices almost becoming licensed and categorized as essentially the same thing. You're paying one cost for AVD, Windows 365, physical device, and you use whichever one suits your requirement. Quite how that will materialize, or if it will materialize, I don't know, but it seems like the next evolution of this set of products.
Yeah, I mean, you can easily see why purely from a commercial standpoint, why Microsoft would want more, both businesses and consumers, frankly, to move to a subscription model, right? Instead of buying a perpetual Windows 10 or Windows 11 license, buy Windows 365. You'll have iterative updates for as long as you pay for it, and you'll consume a cloud PC. That commercially makes complete sense for Microsoft, and the way that, and again, this isn't informed in any way, it's just pure speculation. The theory is that the way that we've seen other medias like television with streaming services and streaming content online and those types of things, the provision of hardware now is reducing. When you think about Sky TV, for example, it's effectively on all streamed. There's no hardware involved. It's a wireless connection to a TV screen. It's not hard to see a world where Microsoft sort of forces people down that route, as they did with M365 to some extent, moving away from perpetual to subscription-based services.
Totally, and the benefits there are pretty ubiquitous as well. As long as you have a consistent internet connectivity, and that's always going to be the caveat.
Yeah,
you can implement a very thin device which has 24-hour battery life because it's not doing any local processing, which is extremely compact, but has the power of a cloud-based PC behind it. I'm not quite sure on the direction there, but it feels intuitive that we would take that approach, because nobody wants a laptop that runs out of battery after 5 hours, and we've seen that with Apple devices evolving their battery life recently as well, and moving to lower power consumption CPUs.
Yeah, for sure. I think your point around internet connection is clearly very valid. I mean, cloud services only work if you've got an internet connection, which seems to be getting better all the time, and advent of 5G and so on and so forth. I think we're at a point now, particularly in an enterprise, where so many of the applications that are being leveraged require an internet connection, whether that be your email or line of business applications like salesforce.com or something that is likely to be SaaS based. How many new application vendors today are developing services that are not cloud native? I can't imagine there are many that are developing products for on-prem deployments, bar maybe a couple of select industries. So we're moving towards a world where everything is cloud-based anyway. So if you haven't got an internet connection, well, you've got other problems than getting onto your desktop.
No, absolutely.
And there'll be connectivity somewhere.
Yeah, there's offline functionality for the desktops potentially, but as you say, it's about the apps, and that's the key point. We're talking about direction of desktops, but actually those desktops are there to perform an action, and that's to give you access to your apps, give you access to whatever kind of business functions you need to use. And I think we're going to see desktops follow that. If the direction of the apps is going to be SaaS, then we're going to see more and more desktop direction choices driven by those SaaS applications. Windows 365, Office 365 is a perfect example. Although I like to use the local application, I can function exactly as well running it via a web browser and perform formatting, write comments, do markup, whatever. So it's an important direction.
It'll be a cultural shift more than a technological one, would be my sense, because how often do we want to load up the local icon, right? It's just
that's exactly it. It's the first thing I do out of habits. But I could get by if I didn't have Office installed on my machine at all.
If it was the only option, then
it works.
It works. Yeah. Look, I've taken up loads of your time. Thanks, Toby. I really appreciate it. Just finally, as a bit of fun, and I did prime Toby before that I was going to ask him, so he had some thinking time, because I know he loves his gaming. Look, you're stranded on a desert island, Toby. It just so happens that said desert island has got plenty of food, water, shelter, and consistent power and internet connectivity.
A power station.
Yes, exactly. But you're stranded. So you only get to choose three games to play until the end of your days. What are the 3 games you're taking with you, mate?
Well, this one was super easy, and I honestly don't think I get bored with these three games. The challenge I have is they're all on three different platforms, so you know, I need a multi-plug adapter. Basically, is my point.
Yeah.
But number one, really boring one, FIFA 23. It's a football game, yeah, but it's just it's infinitely replayable, you know, and it's
because as a Southampton fan, I didn't think you would.
Well, that's why I like to play fantasy football, because the real football is so terrible. Although now I'm actually a card carrying season ticket holder for Eastleigh, so I'll be watching Eastleigh from next year.
Proper football, yeah.
Proper football, exactly, grassroots. But yeah, so that's number one. Number two is a new one, actually. Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. So the new Legend of Zelda game, which so I don't my kids love watching people play games. They like watching me play Legend of Zelda, and it's a great time to spend with them because it's really funny. You can do lots of incredible stuff, and it's massive. So that number two, I think,
world game, right?
It's huge. Yeah, it's huge. You know, you could choose something like Minecraft, I guess, as well. But this is good fun at the moment. And lastly, it's an oldie but a goodie, Half-Life, and it would be the Black Mesa remake, because that's like really long, but it's just incredible, and it's a piece of art. So I could replay that. And there's a load more I probably could have chosen, but I think those three would do me for a couple of years at least, whilst I waited for my rescue ship.
Good choices. I've never played Zelda, but I've certainly played the other two. So good choices. Look, make sure your bag is packed then, so you're ready to go for when you're staying on that desert island.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Toby, thanks so much for joining us.
No problem.
Look forward to seeing everyone else really soon. Cheers.
Great. Thanks, Mike.